I shouldn't have noticed the way she looked at me that night. Or maybe I should have, because once you notice a thing like that, there's no pretending you didn't. Her eyes found mine across the dim room, the faintest trace of a smile softening her face before she looked away. She always carried herself with that unshakable calm, like nothing in the world could make her lose balance. But when her hand brushed against mine as she passed the wine glass, something about the air shifted, a current, subtle but undeniable. She was older, and she knew it. Every word, every gesture had a grace I couldn't match. Mid-40s, poised, elegant, the kind of woman who never had to try too hard. And yet, when we stood close enough that the heat of her body reached mine, I swear I felt the tremor in her breath. I didn't say anything at first. I just let the silence breathe between us. She filled it better than words could, the way her fingers lingered an extra beat before letting go of the glass, the way her shoulders tilted slightly toward me even as her voice carried something like distance. "You're too young," she said softly, almost as if she were telling herself instead of me. I laughed under my breath, not mocking, just unable to help it. "And you're too perfect." Her lips parted, caught between protest and something else. A flicker of color rose to her cheeks, then vanished as quickly as it came. "You shouldn't say things like that," she murmured, her voice low, steady. "It makes it harder." "Harder for who?" The corner of her mouth lifted, then faltered, as though she hadn't decided if it was safe to smile at me. She turned her head, pretending to adjust the candle beside us, but the candle didn't need adjusting. The quiet around us thickened. Outside, faint traffic hummed, but in that room, it felt like the world had pressed pause. My eyes kept pulling back to her, the way the lamplight caught the lines near her eyes, not flaws but maps, proof of a life I wanted to read. The way her hair slipped loose over one shoulder, drawing my attention down, further than I should have allowed. And when she finally looked at me again, her eyes didn't just see me, they studied me, as if she were daring herself to memorize the shape of something she knew she shouldn't touch. I spoke first, but my voice came rougher than I meant. "You're the one who keeps standing close." She froze. Not completely, but enough. A tiny intake of breath. A stillness that betrayed what she wouldn't say. Her hand, resting on the table, tightened just once before she pulled it back. Then, with a steadiness that sounded rehearsed, she whispered, "Don't fall for me." The words hung there like smoke, impossible to grasp but refusing to fade. My chest tightened. I could have nodded, laughed it off, let the tension dissolve into something harmless. But instead, I leaned in just enough for her to feel the weight of my silence. Her gaze faltered first. She looked at the floor, then the glass in her hand, then back at me, and that was the moment I knew she was already slipping, already breaking her own rule. I didn't touch her. Not yet. But I swear she swayed toward me, the faintest movement, a surrender no one else would have seen. And just as the air grew sharp with possibility, the door creaked open. The door creaked open, and both of us turned too quickly. It was nothing, just the old frame settling, a draft pulling it wider. But the spell had broken, and she seized on it like a lifeline. "I should," she began, her hand gesturing vaguely toward the kitchen, toward anywhere but here. I nodded, though I didn't want to. "Yeah. Sure." She moved past me, her shoulder brushing mine, not by accident, not entirely. My breath caught, and I turned away too late. She must have felt it. The kitchen light flickered on. She poured water into a glass, her movements steady, practiced, like someone who had learned to hide in routine. And yet, when she leaned against the counter, glass in hand, her shoulders sagged. Not the graceful posture she always held, but something weary. "You know," she started, then stopped, swirling the water instead of drinking it. There's a reason I say things like that. About not falling. I stayed where I was, leaning against the doorway. I figured. Her eyes flicked up, sharp, almost defensive. Then softer. I've been here before. Not exactly like this, but close. And it ended badly. For me. For him. I didn't ask who he was. I could see it in the way her jaw tightened, the way her fingers gripped the glass too hard. Whatever had happened, it wasn't just heartbreak. It was regret she carried like a stone. I wanted to reach out, but instead I shoved my hands into my pockets. So you build walls? Her laugh was quiet, humorless. You say that like it's a choice. You don't know what it's like, waking up one day and realizing you're twice someone's age. Realizing what people would think if they saw. The words hit me harder than I expected. Not because they hurt, but because I realized how much she thought about it. The world, the whispers, the judgment. She carried all of it, while I only carried the ache of wanting her. I tried to look away, but my eyes betrayed me. The way her blouse loosened at the collar, how the lamplight traced the hollow of her throat. I swallowed hard and forced myself to look at the floor. She noticed. Of course she noticed. Her body shifted, and when I looked up again, she was standing closer. Close enough that I could smell the faint trace of her perfume, something warm, unfamiliar, clinging to her like memory. Her hand lifted, not to touch me, not fully. Just a ghost of a movement that stopped at my shoulder, then withdrew as if the thought itself had been too dangerous. But even that half-second was enough to leave its mark. I should have said something. But the silence between us was thick, weighted. My pulse jumped, and I realized I was holding my breath. She exhaled, slowly. Her voice barely above a whisper. This is why it's dangerous. I stepped forward before I could stop myself, close enough that I felt her breath on my cheek. She didn't move away. We didn't kiss. We didn't even touch. But when her eyes met mine, wide and unguarded, it felt like something had already broken open between us. Something we couldn't take back. The sound startled both of us. Her phone buzzing loudly on the counter. She flinched like it was a fire alarm, grabbing it too quickly. Her thumb hovered, then pressed decline before I could see the name. Silence returned, heavier now. Work, she muttered, though the words sounded more like an excuse than an answer. I didn't question it. I just watched the way her hand stayed on the phone, knuckles pale, as if she were holding back more than a call. You don't have to explain, I said softly. Her eyes flicked to mine, sharp, searching. Then she set the phone down, turning away like she couldn't bear to let me see too much. I moved without thinking, stepping closer until I was at her side. Our shoulders brushed again, and neither of us shifted. The sink dripped once, loud in the quiet. You shouldn't, she whispered. Neither should you. Her breath caught. I could feel it, warm against my skin, though she wasn't even facing me. My chest tightened with the urge to reach for her, to bridge the inch of space that was somehow more unbearable than any distance. But before I could, the front door rattled. We froze. Her eyes widened, panic flashing across her face. For a heartbeat I thought someone was actually coming in. Then, after a long pause, the sound stopped. Just the wind against the old frame again. She pressed a hand to her chest, steadying herself. God! The moment should have broken. It should have sent us scattering apart, back into safe roles, but instead it pushed us closer. The near discovery, the fear of being caught, wrapped around us like a secret binding us together. When she turned back to me, she was too close, closer than she'd ever allowed before. I could see the small tremor in her lips, the faint line between her brows. Do you know how reckless this is? She asked, her voice unsteady now, no longer rehearsed. Yes, I said without hesitation. The truth of it hung between us, raw and undeniable. Reckless. Dangerous. Everything we weren't supposed to want. Her hand lifted again, not hesitant this time, but deliberate. She placed it on my arm, light as a whisper. My pulse roared in my ears. I leaned in before I could stop myself, our faces narrowing to inches, her breath brushing mine. The world blurred, reduced to that point of almost contact, of maybe, of not yet. And then she stopped. Her eyes closed, her grip tightening on my sleeve. "We can't," she breathed, though it sounded more like surrender than refusal. I should have pulled back. I didn't. Instead, I stayed, my forehead nearly touching hers, the silence trembling with everything we weren't saying. It was no kiss. But it was closer, heavier, a tether neither of us dared cut. We stayed like that, suspended, as though letting go would be the real betrayal. The storm came without warning. By the time we stepped outside, the sky had already broken open, rain falling in sharp, relentless sheets. She cursed softly, pulling her jacket tighter. I should have laughed, should have teased her about how the weather matched her mood, but the sound of her voice under that storm did something to me. It felt intimate, like a secret I wasn't meant to hear. We ran the last stretch to the awning, half-soaked, breathless. Water dripped from her hair, tracing the curve of her cheek. I couldn't stop staring. She noticed. Of course she did. "What?" she asked, brushing her hair back with trembling fingers. "Nothing." My throat tightened. "Everything." Her laugh came quick, startled, then faded as she saw I wasn't joking. The rain hammered around us, sealing us in. She looked away, her jaw tense. "Don't do this to me." "I'm not doing anything," I said, though I was. My eyes, my nearness, the way I couldn't stop leaning just slightly toward her, it was all too much. She pressed her back against the brick wall, closing her eyes like she needed the strength. "You don't know what you're asking for. People would." Her words trailed off, but the fear in them was real. I stepped closer anyway, the space between us dissolving. My hand lifted, hesitant then sure, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. Her breath caught, and for a second she didn't move. When her eyes opened again, there was no hiding left. "Say it," I whispered. Her lips parted. Silence stretched, broken only by rain. Then, barely audible, "I think about you. More than I should." The confession struck through me, heat and ache all at once. Before I could speak, she shook her head, desperate. "It's wrong." Don't," I cut in, my voice low, firmer than I intended. "Don't make this about numbers. Or years. It's just us." Her hand rose, trembling, pressing against my chest as if to hold me back. But her palm lingered, feeling my heartbeat, not pushing me away. "God, you make it so hard," she whispered. I leaned closer, my voice barely a breath against her ear. "Then stop fighting." She shivered. "Not from the cold, from me. From us." Her head tipped forward, her forehead brushing mine, damp hair clinging to both of us. I could feel the warmth of her mouth hovering, uncertain, too close. "This is a mistake," she said, though her lips were almost on mine. "Then let's make it." Her eyes searched mine, desperate for a reason to pull back, but there was none left. The rain, the silence, the years, all of it collapsed into this one impossible second. And then, the world tilted in that suspended breath before our lips could meet. Then her phone buzzed again. This time she didn't ignore it. She glanced down, and whatever she saw drained the color from her face. I waited for her to silence it like before, but she didn't. She turned the screen so I could see. A single message glowed back. "Still with him? Careful. People talk." My stomach dropped. Who? She swallowed hard, her hand tightening around the phone. An old friend. Or she used to be. She saw us earlier, at the cafe. The cafe, when we sat too close, when she'd laughed at something I said and brushed my hand by accident. I hadn't thought anyone noticed. She thinks she's warning me, she whispered. But what she's really saying is, she knows. And soon, others will too. The rain hammered down around us, a wall of sound, but I heard every uneven beat of her breathing. I stepped closer. Does it matter? Her eyes shot up to mine, fierce and wounded all at once. Of course it matters. I built a life on being careful. On not giving people reasons to. She trailed off, biting the inside of her cheek. I reached for her hand before I could stop myself. She didn't pull away. But her fingers trembled in mine, not with warmth, with fear. You don't get it, she said, voice breaking. If this comes out, it won't be you they judge. It'll be me. Always me. I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because I saw it then, the weight she carried wasn't just the age gap, or the whispers. It was years of regret, of hiding parts of herself to keep the world from tearing her down. And still, even now, even with fear clawing at her, she didn't let go of my hand. The silence stretched, thick with what we weren't saying. My thumb brushed against her knuckles, a small defiance. She inhaled sharply, then pulled her hand back like it burned. We should stop, she whispered. But as she tried to step past me, her shoulder brushed mine, slow, lingering, as if her body betrayed what her mouth wouldn't admit. I turned with her, close enough that she had to tilt her face up to meet my eyes. I can't stop, I said. The words came out raw, stripped of any defense. Her lips parted, and for a moment, I thought she might finally surrender. But instead, she pressed both hands against my chest, keeping me at bay, though the pressure was faint, trembling, more plea than resistance. This will ruin me, she said. Or save you, I whispered. The rain slowed outside, softening to a steady patter, as if the world itself were holding its breath. She looked at me, torn wide open, and I knew the decision wasn't if we would break, but when. The storm had passed, but the air between us hadn't cleared. It clung heavy, charged, like lightning still lived somewhere close. She stood in front of me, hands pressed lightly against my chest, her breath uneven. She could have stepped back. She didn't. Say something, she whispered. I shook my head. You don't want words. Her eyes narrowed, not angry, just searching. And what do I want? The answer was there, between us, in the space her body refused to give up. My hands lifted, hesitated, then settled just above her waist, not pulling her in, not yet. Her breath caught. You want this, I said. My voice barely rose above the silence. Her eyes closed, and for a moment I thought she'd pull away. But instead, she leaned, only slightly, but enough that her forehead brushed mine. The contact was small, fragile, yet it felt like everything had shifted. I've spent years telling myself I don't, she admitted, her voice breaking. Convincing myself that loneliness is safer. Her honesty knocked the air out of me. My grip tightened on her sides, not to hold her, but to keep myself steady. You don't have to be safe with me, I whispered. Her lips parted. The world seemed to still, the only sound the quiet dripping of rain from the awning above. Her hands slid up my chest, slow, deliberate, until they reached my shoulders. And then she let go. Not of me, but of her fear. Her mouth found mine in a sudden, trembling kiss. It wasn't graceful or rehearsed. It was desperate, clumsy, human. Years of regret in her, months of silent hunger in me, crashing together in one breathless moment. I kissed her back, with everything I had been holding, and felt her melt into it. When we broke apart, she didn't move far. Her forehead rested against mine, her eyes still closed. "This is insane," she whispered. "Yeah." My voice was rough. "But it's real." She laughed softly, shaky, like she couldn't believe what she'd just done. Her hand slid down my arm, finding my fingers, threading them together. "No turning back now," she said. It sounded more like a promise than a warning. For the first time, there was no hesitation, no retreat. Just the raw truth of it, her regret giving way to longing, my self-consciousness dissolving into something fiercer, steadier. We understood each other then, fully. The risks, the fear, the want. It was messy, imperfect, terrifying. But it was ours. And neither of us was letting go. The rain had thinned to a mist by the time we stepped back inside. Everything felt quieter, as if the storm had drained the world of noise. She dropped her jacket over a chair and stood still, not looking at me right away. I thought for a moment she might retreat again, slip back behind that wall she'd built for so long. But then she sighed, not a weary sigh, but one that sounded like release. Like exhaling years of what she'd been holding back. When her eyes met mine, they weren't guarded anymore. "You should go," she said softly, but the way her hand reached for mine betrayed the words. I shook my head. "Do you want me to?" Her fingers tightened. "No." The word lingered, fragile and fierce at once. I stepped closer, and this time, she didn't resist. She let me fold her into my arms, and for the first time, she leaned against me fully, no hesitation, no half-step of distance. Her head rested against my chest, her body warm and trembling. "You make me feel ridiculous," she murmured, her voice muffled against me. "How? Like I'm 20 again. Like I still get to want things." I pressed my cheek against her hair. "You do." We stayed like that for a long moment, listening to the slow drip of rain outside, the quiet tick of the old clock on her wall. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't rushed, it was simple. And that simplicity was what made it feel real. Eventually she pulled back just enough to look at me. Her hand lifted, brushing my jaw as though memorizing me. "This doesn't erase the fear," she said. "People will talk. Maybe it won't last. But for the first time in years I don't care." I smiled, not to comfort her, but because I believed her. "Good. Because I'm not going anywhere." Her laugh was quiet, genuine, and she leaned in again. Not another kiss, not yet, just the soft press of her forehead against mine. It was steadier than the first time, full of choice instead of hesitation. Her hand found mine, our fingers intertwining. The simplest touch, but it felt like an anchor. We sat down together on the couch, close enough our legs touched. No more stolen glances, no more almosts. Just us, side by side, her leaning against me like she'd finally decided it was allowed. And as I wrapped my arm around her shoulders, she whispered the words that broke the last of the distance between us. "Don't let me run from this." "I won't," I promised. For once, she didn't argue. She just rested there, safe and warm, as the night settled around us. And I knew, without a doubt, that this was only the beginning. Sparkles, did you enjoy the story? Speech Balloon, what kind of stories would you like to hear next?